If the price of freedom is to be hated by others, would you still want to be free? The book The Courage to be Disliked by Akira Kishimi and Fumitate Koga has been requested by many. While many might mistake it for a self-help guide, it is, in reality, a profound philosophical work, seemingly simple on the surface, but rich with enlightening debates within. Its arguments are like a powerful medicine, allowing you to see deep into your own psyche. The entire book is written as a dialogue between a young man and a philosopher, much like the conversations between Socrates and Plato. This format makes it easy for readers to engage and connect, yet the knowledge presented is spread throughout. Therefore, reading it only once makes it difficult to condense the ideas and gain a comprehensive view. You might stumble upon a particular phrase from the philosopher that sparks an epiphany, for example, that you must learn to love yourself, have faith, and affirm your being. But then, it quickly fades once you close the book, making practical application difficult. Perhaps this is why many consider it merely a self-help book. Today, we will once again delve into this book, sharing its most essential and core insights. We hope it will help you gain a deeper understanding of your complex inner world and truly grasp what genuine freedom and happiness mean. To get the most out of your reading, I highly recommend reading it at least twice. The first time, focus on the various viewpoints presented in each chapter and identify some key ideas. Then, when you reread it, already knowing the full content, you'll find it easier to perceive the book as a cohesive, coherent whole, with all the smaller ideas seamlessly connected. You'll undoubtedly admire the authors. You'll discover that the central idea of this entire book is likely what's stated right in the beginning. The world is incredibly simple, and people can achieve happiness at any time. The authors use 4 main arguments throughout the book to prove this central point. Now, let's explore these 4 major ideas together to see what kind of courage, the courage to be disliked, we must possess to attain freedom, and how we can achieve complete happiness at any moment. Asterisk 1. Shift from a causal view to a teleological view to face suffering. I believe that if you've ever delved into psychology, you've likely come across the name Freud, one of the 3 giants of psychology. Freud proposed the theory of psychological trauma, a typical causal theory, meaning that to understand the reasons behind our behavior, we must trace back to the past. However, if you blindly focus on past causes and try to explain everything solely through them, you might find yourself trapped in an endless loop. The book tells a story about a person who suffered abuse and violence from their parents during childhood. As a result, this person secluded themselves at home for many years. Every time they stepped outside, they felt intense fear, their heart raced, and their limbs trembled. This prevented them from living a normal life. Yet this person still wished to go out, work, and contribute to society, believing that past psychological trauma was blocking their present life. Here, if we interpret it from Freud's perspective, that every outcome has a cause, and our present self is merely the result of a series of past events, wouldn't there be a contradiction in the example above? If everyone who was hurt by parental abuse in the past * didn't experience psychological trauma, wouldn't that be abnormal or illogical? To resolve this contradiction, the book bases its foundation on Adler's teleological theory. No matter what happened in the past, it does not affect the life of the days to come. What determines your life is the present moment and the purpose behind your actions, not the causes in the past. Similarly, if you realize you often procrastinate and avoid difficulties, that action is your choice, with the purpose of temporarily avoiding stress or fear of failure. If you realize you're angrily scolding your loved ones, it means you've chosen that action with the purpose of making them surrender or admit fault. If you realize you're isolating yourself from society, closing your heart, and separating yourself from the outside world, not wanting to meet others or socialize, then that is your choice in the present moment, with the purpose of merely diminishing your feelings of inferiority and anxiety. Only when you recognize the purpose behind each of your present actions can you truly understand what your deepest fears are right now, or what your big ego is prompting you to do. In other words, understanding the purpose behind each action is the crucial key to changing your life's current state. If we continue to rely on causes, we will never be able to take another step forward. Adler said that what determines who we are is not our past experiences, but the meaning we give to those experiences. Pay attention to this. It doesn't mean denying that painful and unfortunate childhood events have no impact on personality formation. On the contrary, the impact can be immense, but the point is that experience alone doesn't determine anything. It's the meaning we attach to past experiences that directly shapes our lives. Life is not a gift from others, it is your own choice. Your way of living is determined by you. No one can choose their origin, where you were born, what era you live in, and who your parents are not your choices. Furthermore, these things have a huge influence. If you constantly try to analyze the causes, you might feel dissatisfied, inferior, miserable, and blame everything that has happened. To change ourselves, we shouldn't stop there. We must start from the present, instead of flowing backward into the past. By adopting a teleological perspective, you will understand your behavior when interacting with others, that all negative suffering is decided by you *, right here and now. It depends on you and has nothing to do with the past or anyone else. Your next action is to be responsible for yourself. Will you continue to dwell on what happened or focus on understanding and loving yourself more? As Adler said, understanding oneself is the first step towards change. In summary, in this first part, let's remember, no matter what happened in the past, the meaning we attach to it determines our present state. No matter what happened in the previous part of your life, it does not affect the life that follows. Remember that in the present, choosing suffering or happiness depends on your purpose and choice right now. *2. Recognize and fulfill your tasks, your life will become simple. Now that we can face suffering with our present selves, how can we escape the pain, misfortune, and anxiety in life? The young man in the book, still immersed in disappointment with a chaotic life, carried the question, "How can I end this suffering?" He returned to the philosopher. The philosopher shared a profound philosophy with the young man. The source of suffering comes from relationships. This view stems from Adler's philosophy. He believed that because humans cannot live alone in this world, they must inevitably choose a life goal that aligns with this condition, that is, striving to build harmonious relationships with others. Based on life stages and the depth of interpersonal relationships, a person's life encompasses 3 major tasks: work, friendship, and love. The reason these relationships often bring you much suffering and hurt is that you haven't clearly distinguished boundaries in your life, or you are constantly being interfered with by others, or you are trying to interfere with others. This interference is precisely what breaks those boundaries. But what are boundaries here? Why are they important in relationships? I will use a personal perspective, through the lens of the universe, to show you the secret to greater happiness in relationships. It lies in distinguishing and protecting these boundaries. Have you heard of the term, Roch limit? In fact, the universe always teaches you how to love and how to build harmonious relationships with others. The Roch limit refers to the closest distance 2 celestial bodies can approach each other without the smaller one breaking apart. For example, the distance between Earth and the Moon is about 384,400 km. If the Moon crossed its Roch limit, it would shatter into hundreds of pieces. We often see that in most relationships, especially in love, pain and hurt occur most frequently among those who sacrifice themselves to please their partners, or those who easily criticize and control the other person. The outcome for such individuals is often self-depletion to the point of exhaustion, or losing themselves entirely, losing motivation for life. If you are experiencing trouble and suffering in love, friendship, family, and other relationships, it means the universe has sent that person into your life to tell you one thing. It's time you learned to love yourself. So, how do you love yourself? It means you always need to maintain distance and not cross boundaries in relationships. This is similar to what the philosopher told the young man: recognize and fulfill your tasks, your life will become simple. Here, your tasks mean focusing on yourself, loving yourself, and not trying to interfere with others' tasks. Because everything external, including other people, is beyond your control. Stubbornly trying to change or interfere with their tasks will only bring you suffering. If your mother-in-law nags you, that is her task. If your partner treats you coldly, that is their task. If your friends dislike you, that is their task. Your job is to redirect your attention and focus on your self-development. Don't let emotions cross the boundary between you and others. You know, one of the most precious sayings in this life is, I have the right to choose, you have the right to choose. Distance yourself when you encounter pain. Don't get too close. Don't break boundaries. When you let go and don't interfere, things will naturally unfold harmoniously and happily. This reveals how truly profound Zhuangzi's philosophy of Wu Wei, non-action, is. The person who gives up control of life ultimately becomes the master of their own destiny. At this point, you might think, ignoring others like that, isn't that too selfish? People often believe that not caring too much, not interfering in the affairs of loved ones, not meeting others' expectations, is a selfish act. And because of selfishness, one will be disliked. That's why this book is titled The Courage to be Disliked *. But I must tell you that this kind of hatred is very unlikely to happen. Because if everyone in relationships knows how to maintain boundaries with others in order to love themselves, when you know how to fill yourself with love, your life will naturally attract more love. So, be brave, dare to be disliked. *3. 3 specific ways to set boundaries and identify your tasks for harmonious relationships. Next, the philosopher will show us 3 specific ways to separate boundaries and identify our own tasks, thereby achieving harmonious relationships. First, abandon competition. There's a saying, where there is comparison, there will be suffering. Most of the young man's suffering came from comparing himself to others. Since childhood, his parents compared him to his older brother, making him constantly feel like a loser. But you need to know that the more you lack something, the harder it is to let go of it. As people grow up, it's very difficult to escape the mentality of comparing wins, losses, advantages, and disadvantages, because the spirit of competition is deeply rooted in our traditional culture. Many children are asked to be class leaders from a young age. What we hear and see in society allows us to firmly believe that a competitive mindset is inevitable. Without competition, humans cannot progress. However, the philosopher presents a contrasting view. The world doesn't need competition, and individuals don't necessarily have to be in a position to differentiate between winners and losers. The harm of a competitive mindset is that where there is competition, there will be winners and losers. Once there are winners and losers, there will inevitably be friends and foes, and hostility will arise, leading to new animosity. People living with this mindset will constantly worry and feel insecure about what they gain and lose. At that point, happiness will always be like the moon in the water. The more you try to grasp it, the faster it shatters. In reality, you can choose a different path, abandon competition. When you see others progress, you don't need to dwell on your weaknesses. Instead, genuinely celebrate them. When debating with someone, you have the right to believe your viewpoint is correct, but simultaneously, you can acknowledge that the other person's perspective is also reasonable. Only when you let go of the desire to compete will you neither be interfered with by others nor interfere with others' tasks. Only when the fire of comparison no longer inflames your eyes and burns your ears will you stop tormenting yourself and pursuing this meaningless victory. Second, refuse manipulation and control. People who don't distinguish between their tasks and others' tasks will pay particular attention to the opinions of others. Just like the young man, he always tried to meet the expectations of his parents and superiors. In fact, placing too much attention on others' approval and recognition is essentially trying to use your own behavior to control others' opinions, wanting them to pay more attention to you. This is also a form of manipulation. But in reality, this type of manipulation cannot be carried out and will create a huge burden for ourselves. We often see constraints disguised as love between spouses. For example, if you loved me, you wouldn't do that. Or, I've tried so hard, why don't you truly love me? These kinds of interferences are actually due to a lack of trust and a desire to restrict the other person's actions, ultimately leading to tension in the relationship, exacerbating misunderstandings, and even leading to separation and termination. In parent-child relationships, we need to be wary of the repayment mindset. Simply put, it's using one's own sacrifice as a reason to demand things from the other person without respecting their true wishes. For example, parents often tell their children, "Your parents worked so hard to feed and educate you, so why don't you listen?" Such mindsets, whether interfering with others or being interfered with by others, become shackles in interpersonal relationships. Another reason why we constantly interfere with others' tasks is the belief that I am superior to others, or I have more experience, you should listen to me. Your parents have walked every path you're on, don't argue with them. Why can't you even do such a simple thing? And so on. Criticism, control, or feigning weakness and helplessness are all manifestations of being in an unequal relationship. Adler believed that inequality frequently occurs because society tends to maintain vertical relationships, that is, a top-down relationship. This tendency arises from reward and punishment education. If children perform well and meet the expectations of parents and teachers, they are rewarded. Although to a certain extent, this educational method can play a positive role in guiding children's behavior, in its essence, it is invisible control over the child. When the child is in a disadvantaged position, the adult is in a dominant one, as praise encourages the child to continue doing as desired, and punishment deters and guides the child toward your wishes. When this relationship plays out and becomes taken for granted, children will obediently change their behavior to gain recognition and praise. As adults, they will continue a lifestyle of serving others instead of following their own hearts. A person living in a vertical relationship will tend to use it as a standard in all relationships. When they meet someone stronger, they will feel inferior. When they meet someone weaker, they will begin to interfere with others with an arrogant attitude. In Adler's classic book, What Life Should Mean to You*, which discusses inferiority and superiority, he posited two types of inferiority complexes: healthy and unhealthy. With a healthy inferiority complex, people work harder to improve themselves. But when people start comparing themselves to others, they form a harmful inferiority complex and use it as an excuse to retreat from difficulties and maintain the status quo, refusing to step out of their comfort zone and change themselves. Therefore, Adler advises us to turn vertical relationships into horizontal ones, where equality is the core. So, specifically, how can we maintain balance in relationships? If vertical relationships start with reward and punishment, horizontal relationships start with gratitude and encouragement. When you're pleased with someone's behavior, replace praise with a sincere, thank you. When you disagree with something, replace reprimand with appropriate encouragement. This is the method to help you separate your tasks from others. *4. The courage to change comes from a sense of community. Adler said that interpersonal relationships are the source of pain, but at the same time, they are also the source of happiness and courage. So, only by reaching the ultimate goal of building relationships can you gain the courage to change and thus be happy at any moment. The ultimate destination of relationships is a sense of community. A sense of community, simply put, means a feeling where you regard everyone as a partner in an equal relationship. When you achieve that, you will have a sense of belonging. Turning your personal obsessions into concern for others, in my opinion, is a feeling of giving, leading to merging as one with others. The philosopher divides the process of building a sense of community into 3 interconnected steps. Step 1, self-acceptance. It is crucial to acknowledge and accept your imperfect self and an incomplete life. Each of us is a unified entity of contradictions, the result of reconciling different positive and negative qualities. Lacking any aspect, no one can be called complete. This is a classic quote from the book The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. Love your dark sides. It also holds true here. When you are ready to embrace your whole true self, you will be able to observe the purposes behind each of your behaviors, distinguish what is within your control and what is beyond it. Then, you will no longer worry or interfere with issues that inherently belong to others. You won't need to seek self-validation from the outside world, but can instead focus solely on your own heart. Step 2, trust in others. Grant unconditional trust to others, seeing them as friends and collaborators. Abandon the top-down perspective to build an equal relationship. Step 3, contribution to others. This is considered a philosophy that all wise people wish you to aspire to as a life mission, a willingness to give and contribute. These 3 links are an interconnected whole. Do you realize now that the entire content of this book has an incredibly cohesive and logical structure, ultimately affirming one thing to you: you can be happy at any moment, and happiness is always a gift of the present moment. In this world, trying not to be disliked by others is actually quite simple. You just need to camouflage, compromise, and give up. However, it is truly difficult to follow your own path and maintain inner peace, even knowing you will be disliked. What Adler tells us is that we must have the courage to practice this way of life. How many people have chosen a life devoid of freedom simply because they don't want to be disliked? Some sacrifice their principles to meet the expectations of others. Some constantly suppress their emotions, evade reality, and believe that by doing so, life will favor them. But it is precisely this pursuit of recognition that kills one's freedom. I hope you possess the courage Adler called, the courage to be disliked. That is also the courage that helps you be happy right now and at any moment.